Today, I want to talk to you about why I love pop quizzes. If you're one of my students, the parent of one of my students, a friend of one of my students, you've probably realized I give a lot of pop quizzes and I love pop quizzes. And while my students sometimes hate them, in the long run, they actually end up liking the pop quizzes once they realize how this is working and what it does for them. They may not understand all the mechanisms that make it work, but they know that it works. And the next year, in fact, many of my students will actually ask their teachers if they can do pop quizzes because it works. So I wanted to take a minute, since sometimes it can be hard at the time. We want to help you focus on the benefit that you're going to get so that it will be a lot easier to bear up under the daily study that's required. And then, of course, it makes it also more enjoyable when you know that this will pay off and you know why it will pay off. So to understand where I come with these pop quizzes, why I chose them, and all these things, you have to first understand what I finally came to understand. And it's kind of the secret to what's called Bloom's taxonomy. Bloom's taxonomy isn't complicated, it's actually pretty straightforward, but it's not talked about much outside of education and maybe a couple of other specialized fields. So I'll kind of show it to you and go over it with you real quick. And it's essentially nothing more than the hierarchy of how complex and how difficult mental tasks are. If you look at the bottom, you have remember. It's the most basic mental task, the most basic thing the human brain can do. You're given information, you encode that information, you later on retrieve that information. It's very simple, very straightforward. But when you start building on that, you go a little bit more complicated. You get to the level understand, where you're able to explain the ideas or concepts, not just to write it down on a piece of paper, but actually maybe find some patterns to it, maybe start to notice that some overlaps. Of course, apply. You can use that information in new situations, which requires that you understand. It requires that you remember the information. Otherwise, of course, you can't use it if you don't remember it. And then you go up to drawing connections with analyzing, justifying your decision, evaluating somebody else's argument, and finally creation, which is producing something from scratch based purely on your knowledge. You're able to create a whole new world of a novel or even something as simple as just writing a sentence in a foreign language is creation. So, of course, for a long time, learn about this in education classes, but it never really dawned on me the power of this is a pyramid. Right? And until I started having trouble with students who were not getting the material, and they were struggling beyond what one would expect. Right? There's certainly you're going to expect there's going to be some struggle with a new topic. Whenever I teach Spanish, you get into Spanish class, you never taken Spanish before. It can be a little bit disorienting, and students are going to struggle. That's just part of the fact. But they were struggling with things that were very basic, and they were struggling more than one would expect. And it really didn't take necessarily, I guess, a whole lot to help them get past that struggle other than time. What really got me thinking about this was with the first quiz we did of Spanish 1, first of the year, was on one of the verbs that means to be. It's a simple verb. We practiced it in every way I could conceive of practicing with the students. I had them fill in blanks, right? Bubble in. I had everything I could think of. We worked on it for about a week and a half, and the class average on the quiz was like a 50. I just couldn't figure out what was going wrong. I couldn't think of anything else to try, so we just kept on trying the same thing with maybe some new questions, but still, if I had them do fill in the blank, they're still doing fill in the blank. It's still the same presentation because I had used up everything I could think of, and then re-quizzed them, and the scores had dramatically improved to an average about an 80. And I couldn't figure out why until I realized that this being a pyramid, it's all about building a strong structure. It's all about the foundation. If you spend all your time trying to get the kids to do higher order thinking, to create, evaluate, analyze, it's called higher order thinking. It's the top of the pyramid. If you don't focus enough on the bottom of the pyramid, it all collapses. And I was trying to get ahead of myself because in teaching, there's all the emphasis on upper level, higher order thinking. That's what you're evaluated on when you get an observation. I was trying to get there as quick as I could, and we didn't have a strong lower order thinking basic thing. I just guess I considered it too easy to really be worth class time because we have to get to that higher order thinking. Well, that's where the pop quizzes come in. To be honest, with the educational environment, you don't have time to spend on lower order thinking, but you have to spend that. If you look, the creation is a very small point. The volume that's in the remember category is large. If you want to create a little bit of creation, you have to have a lot of lower order thinking, a lot of remembering, a lot of that understanding, a lot of the base of the pyramid. So I started thinking, and what I came up with was the pop quizzes. The pop quizzes, if you look on the left, is a typical pop quiz study guide. Obviously, depending on where you are in the semester, you may not have this study guide, but you can see what they look like. And then on the right, we have the pop quizzes. It's just one page. They're usually multiple pages, or I might shrink these down to get more charts on there. But what I'm doing with these pop quizzes is I'm having students memorize and regurgitate, which is remember. And we do this over and over, sometimes 3-4 times a week. Sometimes it's on the back of the homework, so they're doing it every night. But we're building that foundation of remember. We're putting in that investment at the very lower end of the pyramid so that when we come to class, we've already put in much, much more time than really is even available in class time so that we can go straight to the creation. We've already built that foundation, and that's where we're coming at with the pop quizzes. While they may not be fun, that rote memorization can be built upon in a way that simply giving it to you and asking students to use it, which gets to be upper order, right? Analyzing, applying, we've skipped some steps. It doesn't do well. The whole thing will collapse. So while students struggle with the pop quizzes and they don't enjoy them, that's why the next year they actually kind of request them, because they begin to understand the power that simple memorization can have if it's coupled with follow-up, higher order, utilizing your memorized material in more complex situations.